Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, a team that we haven't talked a ton about during the offseason, but you make no mistake about it, one of, if not the most dangerous team in all of college football heading into 2024, the Texas Longhorns. I think it'd be a good time to talk about how good Texas can be in 2024. Talk a little bit about what we saw during the spring game on Saturday. And Dill, when it's about this time in the offseason, when I'm looking at teams that can compete for national championships, I kind of look for three things. One, quarterback play. We definitely know Texas has quarterback play, whether it's Quinn Ewers, whether it's Arch Manning. Line of scrimmage play. Texas, one of the better teams on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And then thirdly, weapons. A lot of weapons on this team. In my mind, this Texas team checks just about every single box that you want to see heading into 2024. And I guess the last box that you want to see is kind of the intangibles. This team believing that they're one of the best teams in the country, having a strong culture. Coach Sark has done wonders, turning this Texas team into a kind of historically overhyped team to a team that they're good. They know they're good, and they go play and they go make it happen on the football field as well. Let's get into the spring game, talk about how good this team is. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. This Texas team going to be really exciting to talk about over the next couple months. Can't thank you guys enough for checking it out. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to hear some takes in the comment section. We always learn a ton from you guys. And Dill, I'm going to kick it to you. I'll ask you the same question. Texas 2024, how good can this team be?
I mean, they're right there. I think their offense, it should be as good as anyone in the country. You look, there's just no weakness there. I mean, the way Quinn Ewers is developing and getting better, you think he's going to play really, really well this year. You're really good at running back, led by C.J. Baxter, who in the spring game looked like he took a step from being a really good player, but he looks like he's going to be one of the better backs in the country. Offensive line's great. Had the same unit essentially last year. It feels like just replacing Cameron Williams at that right tackle spot looked fine. And then the weapons is just, it's as good as anyone. And I'm almost wondering how they're even going to divvy that up, because you kind of look, I thought it would be those three older transfers, but then you see Jonte Cook and Ryan Wingo really play good football. Jonte Cook especially developing into a very holistically good wide receiver, not just that deep threat. I mean, he can do it all. Ryan Wingo looked really good. It's going to be tough to divvy
Ryan
up.
Wingo's that guy. Like, I was incredibly impressed with what you saw from a kid that should have been in high school during that Saturday. Dill, getting into the conversation, I want to talk about the wide receivers. That's really I think the more interesting talking point about this Texas offense, where last year you kind of had your guys. You had like your kind of true wide receiver 1/2 with A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. If there was one question, and I say question in terms of, it's not necessarily that there's not an answer. It's not necessarily a problem, but it's a question. And I guess I'll ask you this. Who is going to step up and kind of be that wide receiver one for this Texas wide receiver room in 2024?
If you asked me pre-spring game, I would have said Isaiah Bond. I've been on the Isaiah Bond train since he was a freshman in Alabama. The explosiveness, and you saw yesterday, I mean, he's still really, really good. Had a couple drops, I'm sure he wishes he had back, but never had concerns with him dropping the ball, so I don't really take much from it. I mean, Jonte Cook played so good. Just being able to make physical hard catches against really tight coverage. We all know he can burn it. I mean, we knew that from high school, but to see him play just really clean wide receiver on top of that ability, kind of wondering if he can kind of take this room by storm a little bit and be really dominant.
I mean, I think the good part with this Texas wide receiver room is there's so many different ways that they can attack you. And kind of like last year where you had Xavier Worthy, I mean, the definition of your deep threat, the guy with the ball in his hands, A.D. Mitchell, that big physical wide receiver, the tight end play in terms of work in the middle of the field. Very similar narrative about this wide receiver room as well. Dill, I'm not on Isaiah Bond, and I get it was not a very good spring game for Isaiah Bond. I'm just going to treat that as a 15th practice. And you've been on Isaiah Bond since his freshman year.
And it's not like it was bad, because you did see him reel off that big play, and that's what he has, and he'll always have that. So, again, you're not worried about him at all. It's just, it's not even it's not anti-Matthew Golden or Silas Bolden. I just look at the way Jonte Cook played, and even Ryan Wingo. It's like, well, those two are going to play a lot of football this year. Right?
That's where I'm looking at Ryan Wingo and saying, God, on almost every single wide receiver room in the country, this kid's playing as a true freshman. I'm not trying to overreact to what we just saw on Saturday. He seems like a kid that's going to be extremely difficult to keep off the field, and not just because of the physical traits. Like we all know, he was a 5-star coming out for a reason. We covered him when he committed to Texas, the most talented or one of the most talented wide receivers in that class. But Dill, he looks polished up. Like he looks like a guy that also can take those physical traits, contribute on the SEC football field as a true freshman. I feel like we would be doing a disservice if we didn't talk a little bit about Arch Manning as well. In terms of, I'm not necessarily surprised. Like Arch Manning was an elite quarterback coming out of high school. I feel like he didn't have a great spring game as an early and really true freshman, and people were kind of ready to give up on him. I mean, he's had a whole year under his belt. He looked like the Arch Manning that we expected him to look like at the college level.
No, and that's not surprising. And you kind of knew. I think a lot of people were just waiting to get on him. It feels like,
Yeah.
there's the perfect storm. People don't like Texas, maybe. People don't like the Mannings. Or just like people don't like that type of person or like school at times.
100%.
You're right. It's just that was just being haters. Everyone's got a little bit of that in them, I feel like, as sports fans. But you're right. At the end of the day, there's a reason he was a 5-star. He looks really, really good. I mean, it's still Quinn Ewers' room, of course, but like, I mean, they got their guy in the future, and like you kind of look ahead towards him, Wingo, Jonte Cook.
I would even say Trey Owens, the true freshman. Like you talked about the quarterback room for the next couple of years with this Texas program. It looks absolutely phenomenal for Arch Manning. Dill, we knew the arm talent was there. Big body, phenomenal athlete, big time arm, and command. I mean, pocket presence, elite, going through multiple progressions, on time, accurately with the football. I always look for this in the spring game, just quarterbacks, not necessarily showing me that you got the elite traits, because guess what? Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, we all know you guys have the elite traits. Show me the command of the offense. And Arch Manning, I mean, an utter command of the offense. That's what I love to see the most. Touch on CJ Baxter. He just looks like he's leveled up a little bit. I mean, he didn't look like a true freshman last year. Certainly doesn't look like a true freshman this year. Now, Dill, I think the bigger storyline is on the defensive side of the football. And I think where I want to talk about first is on the defensive line, where there are some questions about the interior of the defensive line. My take on this Texas defense is the inside of the defensive line is not going to be as good as it was last year. You lose 2 absolute studs. Caveat, I think the edge rusher position is going to be much better than you saw last year. So, yeah, you're doing what you need to do to make sure the inside of that defensive line is ready, right? You bring in a guy like Bill Norton. You go out to Arizona, grab actually 2 guys from Arizona. But Dill, this edge rusher group, in my mind, is going to be absolutely elite in 2024.
I mean, the edge rushers are monsters. Ethan Burke, he's still continuing. I mean, just like big, long, really strong, really, really disruptive. Colton Vasek kind of almost looks like the carbon copy of him, looks the same. I thought he had a really nice spring, so you're seeing him develop the way you want to. And then Barron Sorrell, again, I feel like people almost kind of forget about him as Trey Moore comes in and Justice Finkley starts to emerge a little bit. But Barron Sorrell's still a monster. He's still there. That's
Barron Sorrell's played damn good football for the last couple of years. Like he's just been, he's not going to be a guy that's going to be a top 50 pick in the NFL draft. But you talk about just reliable players that are good in the run. That's Barron Sorrell. Dill, this edge group looked really good without even Trey Moore, who I personally think is probably going to be the best pure pass rusher on this Texas team.
And I don't want to leave out Colin Simmons because he's playing this year. I mean, he's probably the most explosive player we saw on the field in terms of like how he was getting on the edge and working that way that you can see him getting 10 plus sacks in a year at some point, just because he moves a little different and he didn't look small. That's like the one thing I think we thought coming out of high school is he wasn't the biggest guy yet, but he looked perfectly. He didn't look like there was any physical issue in terms of getting moved around or not being able to be strong enough at the point to make your pass rush moves. He's going to play a lot of football, I think, for them this year.
Yeah, even like you mentioned him, but like I want to highlight it again. We've been extremely critical of Justice Finkley, and again, it's like part of like when you follow the high school recruiting so much, you want to see these guys click immediately. And this was a kid that was a freshman, sophomore. Like it's hard to come in to Power 5 football and immediately dominate. The Justice Finkley, this is year 3. That's normally when you see the line of scrimmage guys kind of break out. Justice Finkley seems like a guy that could really make something happen.
He's starting to move a little smoother where it's not like almost like it felt like a little robotic at times. Like you could see the strength. He always kind of had a little bit of power in his hands, but just moving not the way, not explosively, not quickly.
And kind of knew what he was doing. Like, I feel like there wasn't really much of a pass rush plan with Justice Finkley in the past. I'm going to try to win with my athleticism. If I can't do that, I probably ain't winning. A little bit more of a plan. And again, that's year 3. Like, that's the progressions you expect to take place. Linebacker position, Anthony Hill Jr. didn't do anything crazy during the spring game that I remember. That being said, he's going to be, in my mind, one of the best linebackers in college football. And I think more importantly, I'm kind of interested to see how they utilize him because I think there are a lot of different ways you can get him involved. You look at the back end. This is probably where all of a sudden you maybe have some questions about this Texas team. Now, prerequisite, Andrew McCoob, I think, played like maybe 1 or 2 drives, if I remember. Jahdae Barron didn't play. Now you got Terrence Brooks hitting the portal. I guess I'll kick it to you. This Texas secondary, is that probably the position that maybe you have some concerns with heading into 2024?
Yeah, and honestly, I think you're pretty comfortable with your starting line because I think Derek Williams is awesome. I thought he looked really good in the spring. He looked really good last year.
Yeah,
and frankly, like Gavin Holmes versus Terrence Brooks. Terrence Brooks isn't a good loss. I'm not gonna try to kind of imply that.
Yeah.
But Gavin Holmes can really play. Even you going back to Wake Forest grad, shout out. But like he was good at Wake Forest. I think I was a little bit surprised he wasn't playing more last year. So I don't think you're super worried about the Brooks thing. I mean, still Muhammad's the guy. I think he's the best player in that room or that cornerback room. I think you can stomach the Terrence Brooks loss, but it's definitely not ideal, especially for a secondary that everyone knows needs to play better and just play a little bit more together and look more like a unit and not bust coverages and some of those issues they had last year.
And like it's easy to get on. That Texas secondary last year was incredibly youthful. Like you talk about multiple true freshmen playing back there, multiple guys that were only in their second year. All these guys have another year under their belt. You're bringing someone like Andrew McCouba, who I think is a perfect fit in terms of that experience, safety in the back end. Yeah, it wasn't, and it's like a double-edged sword when you're talking spring games. Like, all right, that offense, that passing attack looks great. Then you inherently have questions about the secondary. That's probably one of the better passing attacks they're going to see all year.
But I do think when you saw that number one group the first 2 series against Ewers, I think they actually looked pretty good. I mean, they were making some contested catches like that one to Jonte Cook on the sideline. That's the way they need to play. They need to be a little bit stickier. They need to be a little bit more aggressive. I thought maybe you saw them drop into those like really soft zones too often. I think you're too talented as a defensive secondary to do that. So I want to see a little bit more aggression how they were playing in the first couple of series.
100% agree with you. And I think that's kind of like that developmental arc for this Texas program where it's like they historically like weren't playing elite defense, but that last couple of years. And I feel like last year they had the personnel to go play that smothering brand of defense. And I don't know if they fully committed to it. Though I think you nailed it. Like I would like to see Texas commit to like that smothering defense. I look in the back end and say they got the personnel to do so. Like that, the personnel in the back end, you could even throw in some young cats that probably won't play this year, like Xavier Phillips, same Kobe Black, Wardell Mack, but they got the guys. And I would like to see Texas play like they have the guys in 2024. Dill, how good can this Texas team be? Right now, my personal rankings, the number 2 team in the country. Y'all see the Michigan quarters. If I'm not thrilled to play Texas in Ann Arbor this year, like
what do you do you think they need anything else? If you're, I mean, I think their defensive front is solid. Again, it's not going to be that like elite unit probably last year unless they make a move for like a Dominic Williams. Then you might be talking something different. I love Alfred Collins. I do think you have that one real difference maker, and then Savea and Broughton, like those guys provide some good depth. But
if you have a bullet left in the chamber to grab one more guy on the inside, like they wanted to grab Jay Toya from UCLA too. Like I could see them doing that. This is a year where you're looking at the inside of the defensive line and say, we got so many boxes checked. Don't go out. Like, don't go into 2024 having a national championship caliber team and not crossing the last thing you need off the checklist. And there are some good interior guys on the list. Simeon Barrow Jr. talking about taking a visit to Texas. If I'm Texas and I have question marks about it, go make it happen. But outside of that, no, this Texas team absolutely loaded top to bottom. I think it's just a question of can you play big in the big moments, because this is a team that certainly can win a national championship.
I frankly, I think they're good enough even if they don't add one more piece. I think if they add one more piece in the middle, then you get really dangerous. And just another physical piece, because you see some of the young guys I thought playing good. January, I thought had a good game. I thought Dre Bledsoe, for what he is, had a good game. But I do think you probably want one more big physical, like kind of the play the way Sweat played a little bit.
Especially when you look at the teams that you might want to beat. Georgia,
Yeah.
Michigan potentially. Hey, Dill, we might have to do an early game preview. Michigan, Texas. That's going to be very, very fun one. Going to get the blood boiling on both sides. We'll wrap it up on that. This Texas team, we probably haven't been put enough respect on this Texas team the last couple of months. Elite team heading into 2024. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Michigan, Texas early game preview. Maybe we'll do that this weekend, Dill. Appreciate y'all rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.